wesn content capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
WESN.
To some degree, we tolerate some amount, a little bit, maybe too much, maybe a lot. It really depends on your point of view. But we tolerate some amount of bubble. And that includes allegations that are not really serious allegations, but they're serious topics. But if you really think that those allegations are meant to lead to anything, well, I have a bridge to sell to you. We tolerate that in our politics and our society, right? We tolerate these types of attacks when one politician could say, well, this other person was involved in something immoral or illegal or what have you. Will it ever be proven? More often than not, it isn't proven. And the systems that fail to investigate these cases to conclusion, they are left alone. They are not fixed. But perhaps we tolerate it too much, and perhaps there still should be limits to what we should accept. One of the other things that I find myself more and more being ironic is having to defend a public utility company, which I also believe is not necessarily in a healthy place and needs significant work in order to be healthy. Yet, to be fair to them, they're actually trudging along. At least they're not trying to make themselves look like an issue and look bad, which to some extent puts them ahead of the curve compared to, say, a lot of politicians out there. And I'm speaking about WASA. The expectation was after Patricia and WASA would be cleaned up next, and then it seemed as though that was harder than it looked. And to be fair, could you imagine what would happen if all of WASA decided to strike for a couple of weeks? I don't know how practical it would have been to restructure WASA and to deal with the fact that, look, not all of the workers would be wrong. somebody is probably going to be victimized in a process that's going to try and separate the wheat from the chaff. Not necessarily going to expect any government to do a perfect job of that. But to some extent, the job may or may not be required. But to WASA's credit, they're not making themselves look like the problem child, you know, encouraging the need that they have to be dealt with sooner rather than later. Now, it's not all been perfect, but they've dug some wells, Tobago, Trinidad, and now I guess the opposition tactic is to say one of those wells is contaminated with carcinogens. Okay. Now, again, usually, what does politician A do? He says bad things about politician B. But now, of course, it's a re-election campaign and the opposition is trying to say the government is doing a bad job. But then it comes to a point where, are you speaking about the politicians or are you speaking about our public institutions, which may or may not be run by the politicians? Now, to some extent, are we saying that WASA is a servant of the PNM? I don't necessarily think so. I have yet to see political shenanigans. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But regardless, okay, I mean, we're going into election and the minister who led that ministry was removed. Well, he was moved to a different high-profile ministry. I'm not too sure if that politically, strategically was the best decision from the position of wouldn't have been good for Marvin Gonzalez to stay leading public utilities until the election so that his experience and knowledge of that ministry could help counteract claims by the opposition, because now essentially the Minister of National Security is having to do that, and understandably so. Coleman Burt, he hasn't held the post for that long. Okay. The thing is, opposition MP Barry Padarath, he is saying to Moruga and Tableland residents that there's carcinogenic, there's believed to be a high, or he's claiming there's a high concentration of carcinogenic material, right, from the, or that could be contaminating the water within the well. And apparently, they're saying that he's claiming that the water supply is contaminated and they are not looking to treat it or something to that effect. I'm trying to reread the article here. And apparently, he says he has a report that says that there's a concentration of carcinogenic material in the water. But then he said two interesting things. First, he said, well, the UNC is reviewing the report and it will release it in the coming days, but he called on the Public Utilities Minister to say whether the report exists. He's called on Coleman Burt. Marvin Gonzalez responded. Now, to what extent is it supposed to be a new report? Because it seems as though the former Minister of Public Utilities has no idea that something like this exists. WASA also refuted it, so of course the institution itself is saying there is no such report. Here's the thing. This is binary. If you have a report, why can't you release it one time? Why do you have to ask the minister to confirm whether the report exists or not with claims that we have the report? How is that more effective? Because if you wanted to catch the minister in a lie, you wouldn't say that you have the report. You would say, well, I have heard things. Minister, what do you say to that? He will deny it, and then you will say, but I have this report right here, black and white, print it out. So why are you going to say we have the report? We're reviewing the report, but we would like the minister to confirm our claims that otherwise, given the fact that we have not shown you any material evidence whatsoever, nor provided witnesses, nor provided anything besides my word that I am telling you that I have confirmed, we're going to ask the minister to confirm it. And when he doesn't confirm it, we're going to say, you see, he did not confirm the unsubstantiated claim that I am trying to say is real, because I am telling you that we have the report. But for whatever reason, we need to review the report. Can't you highlight, just release the sections that matter if you're afraid of revealing anything confidential? But at this point, if there's a report that says that there's carcinogenic materials in a well, I fail to see That's the big confidential thing. Like, what else would you want to protect WASA from revealing to the public? If you have a report about carcinogenic material, I would imagine that's the focus of the report. It is what it is. Are you trying to figure out whether or not you could be sued? Well, here's the thing. If there's a question of whether or not you could be sued for releasing a report, it makes me wonder if the report is the smoking gun that you says it is, that you claim it to be. And the thing about this is, it is similar to what aggravated me with the whole bullying scandal that Stuart Young may or may not be embroiled in, depending on your point of view. We don't have written record to confirm the facts of the matter in that situation. We have a claim of a report. You know how much value I put on the claim of the report? There's less value in the claim of a report than the potential hypothetically non-existent paper it's printed on. Because it means nothing until we see a report. Until it's released to the public. You might as well tell me that WASA has a well that's contaminated with clowns. Because what's going to happen now is, now you're telling people, we already it's an issue, it's a political issue about water supply. And now you're telling residents of an area, hey, your water supply might be contaminated, so go without. Now here's the rub. What if your claim, it might be the truth, but truth in the sense of an exaggeration? Maybe there's a report that is concerned about carcinogenic material. Maybe you misinterpreted the report. Maybe it's an oopsie. Maybe you're stretching the truth a little too much because it's more convenient to do it that way. I don't know. But now that you made this claim, and what's going to annoy me is, then it's going to disappear into the ether. But in my opinion, like the bullying situation, I want the truth. So if there's a report, you better reveal the report. And if there's no report, I would really like to know why you're saying the things you're saying and lying to the people. Because you're telling them, go without water. This is a far cry from saying Stuart Young was a bully, right? No one is there, well, it's still affecting potentially the election. But it's not physically affecting anybody. Or if the PNM says something about Kamala, or if Kamala says something about Camille Robinson Regis, or if Camille Robinson Regis says something about somebody in the UNC. Stick your bubble and your nonsense to each other. Don't bring the rest of the country into it now. Meanwhile, sticking to WASA, Member did say that there would be no water rate increase in the next 2 years. This is one of those things where, while to some degree, they know the situation they're in, so I'm willing to give it a little bit more weight as to being plausible, but I don't think this is, even if I think that they do actually intend to mean it now, I won't be surprised if they win the election, push come to shove, they might have to renege on that promise. So this is one of those things where, you know, we're going year to year now. We're going paycheck to paycheck. We need to understand that. We have been told that we have import cover and foreign exchange reserves. Yeah, right. That one set of money is trying to backstop two different things: our foreign debt and our balance of trade reserves. Those are not the same. So if all of our responsibilities, unfortunately, come up at the same time, we'll be short, basically. So who knows how this is going to go? I don't know if we could keep lending ourselves year to year. Think about it. If your paycheck is not enough for the cost of living and you try to finance your expenses with debt, how long do you think you could manage? That is essentially what we might be facing, because we've kind of been doing that for the last couple of years. We'll have to wait and see, right? That said, I think a lot has to happen with WASA and how that situation is managed for rate increases to probably come through anyway. I'll quickly expect property tax to be expanded, but for whatever reason, they thought we could do commercial and not residential, but not commercial. And that makes sense. There's a lot of big commercial areas and industrial areas that maybe could afford a little bit of property tax that could have contributed. Then again, maybe it's not. Last thing I'll just want to mention briefly here, there's a lot of nice numbers coming from the visitors with regards to Carnival and foreign visitors. Only 41,000 total visitors. Now, do you think that number is small? Do you think it's large over the Carnival period? Does that include the diaspora? I assume it does. I don't think that's all foreign tourists. If we have 41,000 Europeans, Canadians, Americans, I don't think so, right? To what extent is this enough for tourism? Because that is concentrated at one point in time in the year. There was also some good news coming from the Ultimate Cruise, Carnival Experience Cruise. It helped inject a lot of money into the economy. To what extent that was a direct expenditure into local businesses, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't go through all the numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is all well and good. But one of the lessons we need to understand from the Tobago Carnival situation is, even though that's limited to a weekend, eventually it could potentially grow to more than a weekend. But how much more can it grow? And the local carnival experience with regards to tourism, it's at best, what, a month? Maybe it's longer, but how many people are here for a whole month of carnival activities to spend that amount of money, right? That's not enough for a tourism sector. Tourism is not based on if we are full when we're at the busy points. Tourism is based on how much money we make at the low points in order to ensure that we could sustain ourselves throughout the whole year and not have to basically subsidize most of the year with money we make in a very narrow period. And then if anything goes wrong there, our goose is cooked. Hence why, as much as I will always say, we got lucky in 2020. I actually believe that COVID did not hit us because of Carnival that went on in 2020, because we got lucky. And I understand why the government didn't shut Carnival down, because a lot of people would have complained and you would have been real upset. Let's be real. But we got lucky. But to some extent, it was an economic necessity that Carnival went on. We got away with it. God was a Trini up until the following month when, you know, it was all over. But we need more out of tourism. But here's the best part. I honestly believe that Carnival as a tourism product is probably underperforming. It's probably underperforming. More can be done. Because the fact of the matter is, what do we have that other countries don't have? Other countries could do beads and feathers too. Other countries could do fetes, parties, alcohol, soca. Other countries could have all that. What do we have? Answer that question. Figure that out. And then we could say that we have a full cultural carnival experience to offer tourists. And then to some extent, it might not just be limited to people that want to come in and party and go to the cooler fetes and go to the mass camp fetes and go to the Monday and Tuesday with their costume on the road. We could have a whole other market of people that could maybe come not always just on Monday and Tuesday, not always on that week, maybe come before, maybe come after to see the traditions. Who knows? And then we might be able to, I don't know, market the island to whole new markets. Then we could maybe have traditional mass all year round if we play our cards right. Have a museum with stage performances. Have things set up for the cruises, for cultural experiences throughout the cruise season. Who knows? It just takes a little bit of thought, a little bit of effort, and a little bit of, I don't know, will, trust, faith. Anyway, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go into maybe the first story in Daily Review, then we'll get to my guest. We'll have a bugbear of a topic, I guess, for both of us. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSN. Sean Michael Small. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
FanZone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
And we're back on Talking About WSN with today's daily review. We might only get through one story, but it's a big one, and it was actually what was on our affiliate France 24 just before the changeover, and that, of course, is with regards to the American administration, President Donald Trump. They have gone through with placing tariffs on just about everybody. Now, TNT got hit with a 10% tariff, and that has been called a baseline tariff on imports. Now, from what I understand, we have tariffs on their stuff, so that's why we got hit with this baseline. It's basically going along with the theory that America is allowing other nations to profit off of them. Now, while I don't necessarily think that the conceptually it is entirely wrong, I also think that's somewhat of an oversimplification. As I always say, economies, they kind of want to get to a balance point. Now, to some extent, you could use tariffs and subsidies to influence that balance point, that supply and demand balance point, which will then inform you how to allocate your resources for any given situation. And to what extent is this a burden on the U.S. as opposed to maybe a way to help correct deficiencies in economic global trade? I don't know. I'm not an expert in trade, so I won't be able to give you an example on that. But for whatever reason, it seems as though the U.S. is saying, you know what? No one, and this is my thought, no one wanted to deal with it because it's a tough nut to crack. It's a Gordian knot, right? And here comes Trump, and he's saying, if no one else has the cojones, I'm willing to do it. The trick, of course, is arguably, even if you agree with the concept of what he's trying to go for, a lot of people, I think, are still saying it's too fast. The change is coming too quickly, and how is economies and the world going to keep up? Because what's going to happen is, if you try to rush things like this, like I said, economies want to be on a balance point, well, you're going to be unbalanced or have an imperfect situation, and essentially, things like prices going up, they don't necessarily have to be long-term consequences, but it could be short-term fluctuations because of uncertainty. And people, businesses, it's because when you talk about trade, it's not like the American government is putting together its commercial package and going to a foreign country, and the foreign government is accepting, and the two governments are conducting business. Trade happens through multiple dozens, hundreds of different companies, corporations, entities, right? Governments get involved and they use subsidies or taxes or whatever to whatever ends that they want to accomplish. But at the end of the day, the amount of stakeholders in this are so varied. So when now you have disruption, it's not like, well, the governments just meet and kind of figure it out. The businesses also have to figure it out to some extent, their own situations, and that's why the uncertainty and the imperfect knowledge, because we've settled, our balance point caused us to settle. We trade with this, you trade with that, we spend this amount on these goods, you spend that amount on that goods, we have this amount of tariffs, you have that amount of tariffs. We've come to a balance point where everybody's relatively comfortable and stable. Not necessarily fair all the time, but we're stable. And now we have to refine in this new situation what is stable. What could the market bear? What could the buyers bear? What could the suppliers bear with regards to pricing? Do they need to be an increase? Will it trickle down? And then, of course, a price increase in one point of the economic activity ladder could trickle down to other points and have a domino effect. A little bit more on that later. So we have a 10% baseline tax. Guyana is looking at apparently 38%. Most of our other CARICOM neighbors or members are also at 10%. Venezuela's looking at 15%. You know, this is based off of trade. So again, I'm not an expert. I don't know necessarily what Guyana is trading with the U.S. That's going to make it different to say TNT, or if it's it seems, in our case, it seems like tariffs. So they want to slap the baseline to ensure compliance. I don't exactly know what they want from us, but we're in a situation now where, look, Europe, and this is real time. So some of the stuff that I read, which might have been from last night, might be to some degree outdated even now. I'm looking at I assume it's a more recent article. It's only a few hours old, and even then I'm questioning if it's outdated. The European Commission president is basically saying that they're going to give it a month before they retaliate, because they're hoping that Donald Trump might switch gears and change his mind. In fact, one analyst from Italy basically said Europe will have to respond, right? Because essentially they're saying Trump only understands the language of force, and this indicates the need for a strong and immediate response. You don't want to necessarily be bullied, right? Ironically, Trump feels that the U.S. is being bullied. That's why he's having a strong response. But therein lies the rub. This is Matteo Villa, senior analyst at Italy's Institute for International Political Studies, is saying Europe will have to respond, but the paradox is that the EU would be better off doing nothing. And basically what they're saying is, yes, the tariffs are heavy-handed, but if they then retaliate, it could cause a spiral of a trade war that might be worse than just accepting the tariffs. So the dollars and cents wise, EU isn't necessarily sure what it wants to do here, because dollars and cents wise, it would be better not to respond. But I guess they fear if we give Trump an inch, he may take a mile. Now, the flip side to that is, I've always said, it's hard to know exactly what his motivations and end goal is, because he seems to be willing to negotiate, and I guess this is from his experience as a businessman, with a heavy-handed approach. And part of negotiation is, I'm going to demand this when I really just want this. And you're going to see this, and you're going to be happy that eventually when I accept less, you're going to be happy. But the reality is I never wanted the unreasonable. But I'm going to throw it out at you in order to set the tone for the upcoming negotiations, right? That's one theory. How true that is in this case, I'm not entirely sure. Meanwhile, our government, of course, has to face the reality of a 10% tariff increase on imports coming out of Trinidad. One of those things being ammonia. Now, Stuart Young and Amory Brown, they weighed in on this. Minister Brown basically said there's concern that spiraling instability in global trade and economic policy will have significant negative repercussions, particularly for smaller nations. And he's right about that, right? Because essentially, this could lead to a similar situation with what we saw outside, well, that came as a consequence of the war in Ukraine. Food prices went up. Now, it was different external shocks, but at the end of the day, it's external shocks, right? And America being a direct participant in this, and we import a lot of our food from America, you could see where that's very much obvious, right? However, he pointed out, and rightfully so, our country and much of CARICOM, fortunately, is in a relatively low tariff bracket. Now, it seems as though we're going to have to see how we respond. The Prime Minister Young said that, you know, they're going to trust. He's asking on the population to trust that the PNM is going to act responsibly to negotiate its best interests in light of new tariffs imposed by the U.S. I hate to say this, but I think our election is slightly ill-timed. Maybe, depending on when the key timing of these sorts of discussions and negotiations and potential strategic decisions have to be made. If it needs to be done later, well then fine, let's elect the new government so that they could helm the ship with a proper mandate from the people and have that security. But if it needs to be done sooner, this kind of gets in the way, right? And it makes me wonder now to what extent especially if we have a change in government, or the political dynamics of parliament changes, if that could disrupt, you know, our response to this. Young is reminding the population of the PNM's track record in negotiating agreements with the U.S. Well, you know, I guess this is where, that's one of the other things. This whole situation is now being colored politically. So you know, just say the government now, just say the government, right? The PNM negotiators and government negotiators went. Like, that might be semantics, but it is what it is. Now, some of the analysis coming out of this, one that I wanted to make mention, and I'm sorry I don't have his photo to put up, former Finance Minister Marion Around, he warned about combined effects, saying that this could be worse than 10%, right? Combined effects in terms of net revenue, in terms of how it affects the government and how it affects our foreign exchange position. And these are the issues you have to pay attention to. And I think essentially what he's speaking to is the fact that it's not just the 10% tariffs and it's a one-time blow, but then now how that affects things initially, and then how those effects continue to have negative effects at a next stage, and so on and so on. Because the tariffs could also then deal with the cost of trade, again, our foreign exchange position, and our weakened foreign exchange position could then affect our balance of trade position even further, or not. It all depends, right? And of course, Dr. Marlene Arts basically warned, you know, this is the obvious, but I think people need to be aware of this. Will this affect the election? I don't know, because this is an external thing to us. Let's be real now. We're not one of the culprits, right? We only got hit with the baseline 10% like the rest of the Caribbean. But Dr. Arts warned, consumers will probably now have to make slightly different decisions in terms of how we make online purchases, because that could there could be a ripple effect. Supply chain issues, a supply chain domino effect. This might be similar to what Mario Brown was talking about. So, and then of course there's the cost of living going up, right? The minor silver lining is, now there's talk we might need to look at other markets for our goods, like maybe Canada, which I don't know to what extent that would be realistic. Maybe Europe, which might be more realistic because it's a larger market overall, but if there's a trade war between Europe and America, I don't know how that will work out for us. Maybe it'll be fine, maybe it won't. It all depends on how that goes. Also, Europe is further away. That does matter. It might not matter that much. Cost of shipping, though, would be higher. It's one of the reasons why we not being a vacation destination for Americans is just one of those weird things that, you know, you don't have to question, what is it? Why is it so bad? But anyway, I do wonder if there may be opportunities depending on if certain goods and services or markets aren't available to the U.S. You know, if these tariffs, depending on what it does for Guyana's situation, if there might be a version of events that will make Guyana more amenable to work with us. Maybe not, who knows, right? I mean, maybe this 34% tariff will give the U.S. leverage to demand certain concessions from Guyana that will then indirectly benefit us somehow. Maybe not. The flip side is, as one of the major economic players in the region, CARICOM should look at what's happening in Guyana, at least on the surface level, and have concerns that it could trickle down to the rest of us because energy security in the region, et cetera, how could we not be concerned with regards to what's going on in Guyana? And I'm actually saying that not necessarily for TNT per se, but for the rest of CARICOM. And I don't know if this is what Marion Brown said about compounded effects, but again, our regional position might take a hit, and then there could be other trickle-on effects onto us because of that. Maybe. I am not economist enough to know. But with that said, we'll hit pause on this topic here, and I will welcome usually he's on a Fridays, but we have Mr. Retired Police Inspector Ashraf Ali here today to speak on a topic. At least from certain perspectives, I think it's one of those things that kind of grinds our gears. Stay tuned to Talking Money WSN, and we'll be right back after this.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience.
Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, you know, I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
And we're back here on Talking Point on WSN, the Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by our disaster management expert, among other topics. One, Mr. Former or retired Inspector Ashraf Ali. Ashraf, boy, you ain't thinking about going into politics like one of your colleagues?
You just had to do it.
I just had to
do it. Well, I think it's about time that we see that that police officers also have value and they can contribute to society other than just being law enforcement officers. So I wish Mr. Alexander all the best. He made a decision, and I think that whatever decision he made, he would have considered that. So I wish him all the best.
I'll say this: I do not see his candidacy as all bad. My only thing is he's not a politician, so kind of seen a very big, spectacular failure of that in an attorney general who had no political experience. So we have to see how it goes with him.
Well, I guess
one could argue senior police officers have to engage in politics.
And sadly, we have been saying over the years that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has become political.
Internally.
Internally and externally. So I guess this is a stepping stone. But that's a topic.
Let me not distract and take up too much of your time. That was just I just thought I hit him with that on the spur of the moment, right? Because hey, we have a former ASP, acting ASP here, you know.
I hear you.
You know, red, yellow, or blue. Anyway, let's not get into that. Now, you're here to speak about something that also bothers me because there are a couple of issues I think we take for granted. One is education, of course, diversification and the economy and the private economy, creating jobs, all of those things are important. But what actually ties into a lot of the value of our lifestyle and our economic capacity is our road networks and our transportation networks.
And the efficiency of it.
And the efficiency of it. Because to some extent, we've made a couple of weird choices with our society. We've stuck a lot of our government bureaucracy in the northwest corner of the country. We have limited road networks in certain parts of the country. And our economic activity is concentrated in specific areas that may or may not be able to handle the literal traffic just of those things like delivery vehicles and what have you, right? And our public transportation system is also trying to exist on the same road network as private vehicles and all of these business vehicles. And at some point, you know, we keep trying to expand roadways, but there's certain areas where we can't expand roadways. Case in point, the mayor of Shogunas, he is concerned that, okay, we're expanding the highway. We have 3 lanes to the north of Shogunas, 3 lanes to the south. There's an overpass that's only 2 lanes. How is this supposed to work? And I do wonder if we're trying to tackle the problem from the wrong direction.
Well, it's multifaceted in that context. But let me just bring this to you.
Yes.
There was an article, there was an article that was reported on United Nations, the ECLEC, which is called the, let me just give you the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, sub-regional headquarters in the Caribbean. They did a research last year, and the article came out in January 2024. What was very interesting here is that we have been saying this over and over, that there is an economic cost for traffic. And this article is very instrumental now that you can actually see, understand that there was some research done in it, specific with Trinidad and Tobago, and it was specific in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's indicated that the direct, and I'm quoting here, the direct economic cost of traffic in Trinidad and Tobago is estimated at $2.6 billion per year, or 1.3% of the GDP. That is a significant amount. That is money for entire ministry.
But not just that, I think we need to understand that, and that is just the direct cost of estimating how much is lost on productivity and the like, right? That is borne mostly by the private sector, I would argue.
And exactly, and to add to it,
not the government.
It says that an individual spends almost 1 month in traffic per year. That's you imagine that you actually spending 33 days in traffic delays, traversing to and from home, and there's work. So they're talking economics from leaving home to go to work. So that's where economics is. Not only leisure time. We're not talking leisure time. We're talking about productivity. So it's leaving home to go to work, from work back to home. That is significant. But the article didn't take into consideration the other aspect of what we are talking about. What about your social economics, your social lifestyle, and your psychological state of mind when you are in this type of traffic on a regular basis?
Because in a perfect world, it's just the traffic. But in a real world, it is the traffic plus who bad drive here, plus, you know, not just the normal traffic, but then who decide to do some nonsense, get in an accident, then now they have to lock off 2 lanes out to the highway, right? Because it's then who decides not to, if they can't clear the highway in time, or they don't have the equipment in time, or the equipment to clear the highway is stuck in traffic too, right? And all of those other things that just add to it, people's attitude because of the traffic, right? Who cut you off, who cuss you out and shout at you, and that, psychologically speaking, there's indirect costs that 2.5 billion doesn't even get to, right?
Because we have the aspect of road rage getting involved into the situation where persons might become a little additional road rage.
Do taxi drivers deal well?
They don't deal well. Because honestly speaking, I mean, when you are looking at the roads to earn a living, they are looking to ensure that they can maximize the day and maximize the day in the most safest manner, I would hope, right, to generate the most amount of income that they could on a daily basis. Because there's a lot of persons that want to travel and have to rely on private transportation because public transportation is not as efficient or
even
existent in some areas. So we have, so honestly, so there's no choice. Then we have the whole thing, this thing about it. And I would bring it onto the other aspect of it, whether or not that Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the traffic management of the roads, are they understanding that when they do the traffic management, it has a twofold effect? One, enforcement of the laws, and ensuring that they have safety on the road, but they have to also understand the psychology of what they are doing, because a simple accident on the highway where you block off the entire highway, when all you may need is directing traffic for an officer to direct the traffic and take away some of the stress of the individuals who are already on stress, that is where you always have some problems that you need to understand that traffic management is not just worrying about it, because an accident on the southern, any one of our highways has multiple effects. It is a rippling effect all the way down to the west. Sometimes it affects the east and further south. So it is not only about that simple accident that is taken right here.
All right. I've been told we have to take a break, so we'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll. the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable. Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
I'm back here on Talking Point. Apologies. I had a clip about a mass transit system, which I have talked about and shown before that I wanted Ashraf to see so we could talk about it, but we won't be able to do it. I'll just describe it to you in general. Maybe I'll show it to you on my laptop. But before we get to that point, you had an example. Well, yeah, you had an example that I wanted you to explain to me because I'm not necessarily aware of it. I also have an example of myself of something similar to what you were just talking about, the trickle-down effect. But I think it was at Dwight York Stadium.
Yeah, recently there was a football at Dwight York Stadium. And somehow or the other that when we have these events at these national events, traffic also seems to be the key issue. Because part of planning for these events is a proper traffic management plan because you have to anticipate that you have additional crowd, additional persons coming that is not on an ordinary day. And when you look at the highways on a regular basis, you already have a large volume of congestion and traffic taking place on a regular day. When you have an event of that nature that is anticipated additional traffic, you have to plan for that also. But you have to consider also that, and one thing that I don't think that we considering is how does this event and I'm not talking about the promoters, I'm talking about the law enforcement officers who are dealing with traffic management at the same time for these events, right? How does it impact the general public? Because you want your event not impacting the general public, right? You don't want any negative publicity about your event.
Although I would argue that approval for certain events should also include by the authorities, all right, how will this impact traffic and is this feasible?
And then you have to now implement a more effective traffic management plan. The reason why traffic management for Carnival works the way that it works, you will expect some level of traffic, but it is not as difficult or challenging for those officers to manage because persons will expect it because there are certain type of things that are put in place. There's the traffic restrictions that has been published, so it is gazetted.
But also people kind of know this is happening, let me not be in the road if I don't have to.
Exactly. So you're going around your merry way and you're now finished working in Port of Spain because everybody working in Port of Spain. Yeah. Right, unfortunately.
100,000
yeah,
or something.
So you're finished in Port of Spain. So you're already in your mindset that, listen, I have the traffic that I have to face on the Beatum because I know when I reach, and I'm not saying I'm going to head south, when I know when I reach the Beatum, I have some traffic to beat. When I reach the Creb overpass, we have some, I might get
that's where...
I might get some level of relief on it. But then I know I have to face. So psychologically, an individual who is leaving work, is preparing himself for that traffic because that is what they're expecting. Now, when you have a vast majority or a large percentage of the public service working in and around the city of Port of Spain, I have no issues with that. It's a city, so you have all your major. However, when you don't have a traffic management plan or a proper transportation system in place to take into consideration those individuals who come in, because first things first, parking is a challenge in Port of Spain.
I think a lot of people just don't go to Port of Spain anymore if they could help it, in part because of parking.
When you are leaving Port of Spain, even if the public transportation is there, let us be real, the buses cannot effectively maneuver on the highway because they are still in the same traffic as the
more on that later.
Everybody else.
More on that in a slight bit. But I wanted to get to the fact that my example that speaks exactly to what you're saying. It was a Friday afternoon. We were looking to go to Shogunas, to go to a store in Shogunas that has like a little afternoon, I don't want to say event, but they have facilities where people that partake in the hobbies of the store could kind of meet and whatever, right? Nothing too fancy, right? But the point is we had to leave Port of Spain. And this just happened to be the same day that there was some event or the opening of the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, and there might have been some other event not too far away in that same direction, southerly direction. So what happened was the traffic technically started from Diego Martin. We were in town, passing the Twin Towers by around 2, 3-ish, and we got to Shogunas, not necessarily, we got to Price Plaza Shogunas sometime after the sunset, right? And I think we eventually got to where we were going sometime maybe around 8 o'clock. We left either at 2 or before. And we were accustomed to, if we leave maybe at 2 or before 2, we would get through without too much of a fuss, right? No, not this time. We were basically sitting on the car for 6 hours. And it was essentially, think about cars going from Diego Martin all the way to I guess, maybe Shogunas or the Cricket Academy. I'm not sure exactly how bad it was all the way down there because I wasn't going that far. But essentially, think about that entire, and with the highway, we're talking 3 lanes of traffic, full of cars. That's the amount of people that essentially was stuck in traffic for hours that day. And it was a one-off, but dare I say, can't it happen? I think there was a situation where we were going south, there was a truck that ran off the road. There was traffic on the other lane, right? But the best part was, not only was there traffic because people were macroing, there was nothing blocking. People were macroing, so they slowed down, so they caused traffic to pile up going in the northerly direction, right? Yeah. When it was time for us to go back to Port of Spain, the traffic still persisted. Hours later, the truck was no longer there. But for whatever reason, the inertia of people slowing down at this point continued and persisted, despite the fact that there was no reason to slow down anymore. So it's things like that. Now, that said, I do wonder if we are trying to tackle traffic kind of one-dimensionally. Oh, well, we need more roads. If we have more roads, then there'll be less traffic. And I said, no. I think things like where our facilities and services are located, the availability outside of just sticking it in Port of Spain, which arguably you can't widen the road networks into Port of Spain any more than they already are, right?
True.
Unless you buy up land and knock down houses and all kind of craziness. But then there's also the fact that you said it, the public transportation system as it is right now. Okay, we have a bus route going east-west. We don't have a bus route going north-south. And we can't even keep the buses running, right? We tried the water taxi to go north-south to help for that situation, but I think, the cost of operating that also. So this led me to, part of it is, I do think buses are the answer, because we spoke about rail, but I don't know to go back to rail and to invest in rail and put down a train, right? Because we'll have to take away the bus routes.
So one of the things is that, have we accepted that we are a traveling or traveling public? Or should say we using public transportation as opposed to private transportation?
Because everybody wants their own car.
Everybody wants their own vehicle. Yes, and everybody's entitled to purchase their own vehicle. I have no issues with that. But when you look at the roads, 10, 15, 20 persons working in a building in Port of Spain.
I think you're underselling it there, but
I'm going to use that as a small figure.
Yeah.
That means 20 vehicles, because everyone coming from one direction, let's say one vicinity, and everybody wants their own vehicle. You know why? Because you want your opinion that I want flexibility of my time. I am not concerned with when I want to leave when I want to leave. I have my own business. Because I have other things. So you can't vex with anybody. I'm not vexed with anybody.
How many of us actually end up leaving when we want to leave? Because of the traffic, you have to plan your timing based on the traffic.
So, and then because of this whole thing that persons want the convenience, because they purchase a vehicle for convenience of themselves and their family. So I am not bothered by saying this, no, I'm going to carpool, because carpooling means that I cannot carry you to all the runs that I have to make before I go home. Right? So it's about understanding that it is not just about the vehicle. No, I am just speaking about the vehicle. I haven't touched on the risk associated with the number of additional vehicles and the type of vehicles that we have on the road when we have hazardous chemicals and everything else
right
on the road.
This is industrial transportation.
And then we have the potential for additional, the more vehicles on the road, the more aggravated some people might be trying to maneuver.
Because there was a study that came out. Basically, they were looking at widening roads in different jurisdictions, and basically they said, well, when you widen the road, what that means is more people think that there's more road, so the cars will just increase, at the amount of cars at the same time will just increase to kind of compensate and wipe away the gains made by widening the road. Now, what did help was when they took out traffic lights going east to west for certain parts of the highway.
Yes.
You felt that difference.
Because you have
right?
a constant flow.
And then going south, at least to some extent, you're supposed to have a constant flow because there are overpasses and not traffic lights.
But the challenge you're facing is that the overpasses are not 3 lanes. The overpasses are sometimes 1 lane or 2 lanes.
Right.
So there's no way that you can avoid the bottlenecks that we are taking place. So you have 3 lanes going into 1. That is a chaos. That is a recipe for chaos in any event, because there's no way that you can effectively manage that bottleneck, because the road has so the highway has been expanded for the purpose of allowing more vehicles to exit.
Now I think we can decentralize government, particularly once digital transformation catches up. Although Dr. Sheikh Mohammed did say that they are doing hard work over there, but I would argue even if they're successful, they're literally trying to get the entire government digitized. It's hard enough to get one company, but imagine now trying to get every ministry and what have you, and how big they are. Health, national security, education. That alone will be a ridiculous task. But if they're able to do it effectively, you could easily still keep your central offices in town and have satellite offices around the country.
There is another way that we may consider the issues with traffic. We need to consider changing the hours of work.
Ooh.
We cannot have all public services and a majority of public and private services working along the same line.
You want the unions to riot?
No.
You know they will.
They
don't accept change that easily.
Well,
not all of them. Some of them might.
They may not, but it might be more productive because doing ease of business means what? It's just a term you want to use?
It doesn't make sense that government services are only available during work hours when the bulk of us have to work.
And we have to work. So yes, you can, and people complain about...
But you see, a lot of the employees in the government would say, well, I don't want to work after 4.
You may not want to work after 4, but because you know why? Because you're keeping the hours of the morning. If you have to hustle, come here for 7. Come on, why not come to work 10 o'clock?
I mean, listen, I might make that decision, you might make that decision. I am assuming, this is an assumption, a lot of people won't be willing to make that decision because they're not necessarily thinking far ahead and they don't want to. I mean, change is something that humans are not comfortable with. Even myself, changing my routine, right? So it's not like a decision I would make easily. I
agree, but I agree. But it's something that we have to look at because we are literally spinning top in mud because the hours are fixed.
I mean, I agree with you.
The hours are fixed.
We could look into it at the very least.
You have to consider, because let's put it this way, there's not much you can do with the road network. Again, you can't expand it more than it is.
Yeah.
Because the more you expand, is more volume it's going to take, and it's going to add to more congestion.
One of the things why I think decentralizing is so important is we can expand in areas where the road network is underdeveloped.
Yes, you can.
Right? So we can expand essentially south and east, or more exactly southeast, right? Because literally we have the east-west highway is really a northern east-west highway. It's not a national east-west highway, right?
True.
And the north-south highway is really a western north-south highway. So there is larger than the southeastern quarter of the country where what major highways are there to really facilitate the free flow of people and goods and services, etc., etc. So there's a lot of untapped potential to decentralize. But I do think, though, that in the short run, because they will talk about rail is expensive. Buses can work like rail, and unfortunately, we can't show it to you, but I just want to point out, this is in Colombia, and this is a very recent video. If you look at this bus, that is not a window, that's a door.
Right.
And you see how many of them there are on this big bus, right? And of course, they have a large volume of buses as well. But then there's another thing that I want you to see, because they're loading onto these buses like if it's on a train station, where they have a metro card, right? Like a North American subway station. So you're not trying to like get on the bus and pay your toll, and there's one door in and out. They're opening multiple doors because it's a platform, so they could load and offload quickly. You have your card like a metro card if you're in the New York subway, and you just pay to enter into the station, and you load and offload fast, and you see the size of the bus, right? Because essentially mass transit buses, they're not going to be like the PTSD single units. I mean, we have those double units where they have that soft hinge,
but you know,
right? But these seem even bigger than that. And the key is, if in this example, they're on their own dedicated lane. Now we have half of that already.
That is where we are coming to.
We have half of that already. We have the bus routes. You just need to get rid of all of the political patronage passes, right? And all of the extraneous cars that are not supposed to be there. And to some extent, because this is what I hate, right? When we talk about mass transit, what about the taxi men and the maxi men? Well, listen, most of them, at least some of them, don't own the cars that they drive. They could drive a bus as easily as they could drive a maxi, right? And I think, though, it would be a worthy exercise to then have a north-south bus route. Now, maybe it's a little bit further east, right? Because, you know, we can't go straight through where the highway is. It's too built up. But we find a relatively clear path. We cut a bus route down there. And that could potentially give an opportunity now for private business to further expand, right? Because we could put a highway alongside that. I don't know geographically, topographically, if that will work, but that's my thought.
Yeah, I agree there's some potential in some of it. But even with what our own, or with the infrastructure that we have, it can be utilized more effectively.
Yes.
You have 3 lanes along the highway. heading north-south, east-west. 3 lanes. However, all the lanes have the same amount of speed, same speed demarcated, 100 kilometers. So then we have to understand that there is no fast lane, slow lane, or anything at all. There's not, there's not a dedicated.
Yes.
So I am simply.
How are you gonna?
We have to. I think it's about time we consider one of the lanes, which is considered to be emergency lane. And when you have emergency lane, you categorize the type of vehicles that should be on the emergency lane.
Okay.
Either a bus, either you utilize it, because you can't have all the lanes for all different type of vehicles. So you categorize the vehicles that should be on a lane. Buses, because you're looking for free flow of transportation, right? And if you want to enhance transportation, you might have you have to ensure that the public sees it as it is efficient, that I leave at a particular time and I can reach a particular destination at a particular time.
Because one of the things is, they have this video here, the guys are standing in a spot, it's an intersection of 2 bus lanes, I think it is. There's like 6 buses in 10 seconds just going,
and buses have to be coming on a regular period, on a schedule that has been kept. You may have some shortfalls with time allotment in schedule, but you have to keep it tight. Then emergency vehicles that are on the highway, so you don't have to worry about police officers and all the vehicles with sirens traversing in between vehicles and pushing vehicles are all because of an emergency, and people complaining at what emergency they have because we have some persons have abused also at the same time.
But the flip side of that is, what if it is an emergency? I've seen an ambulance kind of be half stuck in traffic because they have to wait. Like, don't matter how much siren you have. If there's nowhere for the cars to go in front of you, there's nowhere for them to go.
Exactly. So when you have this lane that is designated for emergency vehicles, but you categorize the lane, right, and say, okay, buses, this is the bus lane. Emergency vehicles can utilize the bus lane with a siren. You must have your siren on, utilizing the bus lane, right? And other vehicles that is considered to be essential, or your categorized type of vehicles that has authorized to use those lanes.
Which that could be where the implementation might falter, because then you'll see government minister XYZ, I have to get through, right? But it's like, you have a meeting at 6 in the afternoon, heading to a FET. But I know what you mean.
These things can have a benefit, because when you look at what is taking place currently, I applaud the fact that we want to expand the roads, the highway. So that's a positive in terms of expanding the highway. But the consequences of expanding the highway, how are we going to treat with that consequence? Because heading down south, when you have 100, I just using a vehicle, a number. When you have 1,000 vehicles going down south and you expand that entire highway, it means what? You have space for another 100 vehicles. So there is more traffic going on the highway.
You see, the trick is, right, we would need to invest heavily into our bus network for it to make a difference. But if we do so, right, and if we do, right, so we have the bus route that goes west to east. We could, in theory, it would work. We could implement this now by taking a lane from the highway and letting buses use it and not letting cars use it. So, of course, police now are going to basically have to be patrolling that like nobody's business, because you know how trainings are, right? But if that can be utilized, the demands on the road network should drop. And then, of course, there are subsequent things that you have to figure out. Like, okay, we have buses that basically run west, east, north, south, right? In a cycle, in a pattern. We need enough of them to make them both reliable, and the wait in between can't be long, and also enough of them so that they could carry the traffic, the sheer volume of people. But once that's instituted, there should be less cars in the road. Then now, we have to figure out how would transportation in Port of Spain look. Will it also be buses? It can't be the same big buses.
No, it cannot be.
Right? But then this is where the taxi men could still, find work, or the normal buses of the PTSC could potentially find some work. I don't know how well this would work going west of Port of Spain into Diego Martin or not. But given that, the situations there, like, there are ways to make this work. Canada has a very interesting system. New York has ways that it utilizes it.
We must have transition hubs what we have here
yes,
is...
because that's what Canada does. Their subway basically sends you to a hub where you then could take a tram or a bus, right? So there's only 2 subway lines in Toronto.
So look at our...
A small bus.
Our priority bus route. The intention was good. Application right now is poor.
We don't have buses, so yeah.
But along the bus route, it's a very close proximity to the main road in some areas.
Yes.
The main road. But when some of the locations are where the buses stop off, for instance, is it a transition hub? No, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Citygate is the main location that you pick up. When buses come off, the buses have to come off route to go into Arima. Because the transition hub for Arima is in around the stadium.
Right.
So the buses have to go into the heart of Arima.
But if we had, you see, if we planned it out, then we could say, all right, well, we'll just utilize taxis there.
So that is it. So along the bus route, I am simply, so the
right.
bus route, you reach the licensing office with the end of the priority bus route heading east. Transition hub, taxis take persons from that location, shuttle back into
and now think about it, taxis now, you don't have to be a taxi going east-west.
You don't?
You could be a taxi doing a very narrow route.
Because that is your area. That's where transition and the hub is about. So you have your area. Simple. Look at how La Hocata and Maloney taxis, maxi taxis have to operate. They pick up persons within those zones and then come back into the priority bus route. I am simply saying if you have a shuttle service within that, they don't have to hurry. They don't have to worry about coming to the city of Port of Spain, coming down to Port of Spain city gate. Their transition hub might be closer to let's say Tunapuna or Maloney, where they pick up with individuals and transition and shuttle persons in those areas.
What could also happen is there could be tolls. We have public transportation now. Yes, it's not going to be free, but I also believe that to some extent, one of the ways you should manage traffic is to have tolls, because tolls will encourage carpooling, number one. And number two, we have a lot of people, if we have a mass transit system, and of course, a lot of the end goal of that is to get people into and out of Port of Spain. But once they get into Port of Spain, you would want traffic to be able to flow free enough so that you don't then get stuck now still in traffic in Port of Spain. And yes, we could have taxis just running around Port of Spain, just circling Port of Spain, to get people to where they need to go within Port of Spain.
Exactly.
And if there's no traffic, then it just makes the system all the more better. The taxis won't have to pay the toll. No. Private vehicles will have to pay the toll.
A couple of years ago, a minister of Works and Transport made a declaration, and who was in charge, when he was in charge of Works and Transport, said that persons who are utilizing the priority bus route in a private vehicle, 5 or more vehicles, 4 more persons in the vehicle, 3 or more persons in the vehicle, they can utilize the priority bus route. It's good for good from one aspect of it, but then you had an influx of individuals going on the bus route. No, that was an opportunity to carpool, right? So you have 5 persons, right? You utilize the priority bus route to alleviate some of the. So that was four additional vehicles you're getting rid of.
Basically. For every passenger, basically.
Yes. So there are 4 additional vehicles going to Port of Spain.
But not always, though.
It's not always. But we have to explore best options.
The other thing is, I believe Jamaica did it where they finance the construction of a highway with tolls. So it's not just, we have tolls. The tolls is a double-use tool, right? And the tolls, they can be structured in a way where, all right, obviously, if you want to drive to Port of Spain and you want to add to the congestion in Port of Spain, you might have to pay something, and public servants may or may not have to pay that as well, right? Because there's too much of the employment this is just one of those things where practicality might give way to other considerations. I'm sorry, but if we have I would much rather say public service get free public transportation, right? Than to say, we could all just swarm Port of Spain. But also, the tolls, it's not just to control traffic. It could help maintain the road system and finance expanding the road system, which depending right? Obviously, if it is to help the road system to certain far areas of the country, I wouldn't necessarily say toll that, right? I wouldn't say, oh, we're fixing roads to Moruga, let's toll the people in Moruga. No. But if we do have like upgrades to the major road networks now, right? If we do get another north-south highway, which I do think we do if we ever want to utilize the eastern side of the island, that could have a toll depending on how much economic activity we anticipate to be generated by it, right? It might take a while. Also, as much as they pre-exist, maintaining the highways that we do have, particularly in Trinidad, not so much Tobago, but maybe even in Tobago as well, right? But Tobago is a tricky situation because it's a single lane, right? Now, there might be room to expand to allow for buses, but that's a big project, and right. But at least in Trinidad now, to maintain our highways, because that's the other thing. Could you imagine if we had a hole in the highway, what kind of disruption I would have for weeks? I remember there was a sinkhole right on Ryson Road, right just before Peaks. Right? And that sinkhole caused traffic throughout Woodbrook, right? Because it just impeded the flow of traffic west. So it just backed up all the way down to, I think, the top of Tragrit Road there when you get to Roxy.
All it would have taken was have to consider that you have to look for additional routes for persons to go. Now, when you look at it from a different perspective, when you look at the economic cost here, cost of living is also increasing. Whether we like it or not, cost of living is also increasing. You purchase a vehicle for convenience, but at the same time, you have to spend. It is more challenging because you're spending gas because you have to remain in traffic for long.
Oh yeah, that's true.
If you are now traffic because you're running air condition, your fuel consumption is going to go down.
Yes.
Right? Because
no, but also it's a lot less gas cruising on the highway than having to start and stop.
Start and stop. Then for the traveling public, you have to worry about the cost of traveling on a regular basis. When you look at when you hear the cost, and I don't know the exact figure, so I'm just going to use a figure for discussion purposes. Let's say you're spending $20 from San Fernando to Port of Spain. $20 coming and going. That's $40 every single day for 5 days to the week. Right? Like $200 a week. Multiply that by 4. That's close to $1,000 from your salary.
The water taxi proved that if you give people the alternative,
they will utilize it.
It was not poor people utilized. It was people who had cars, who could have driven to Port of Spain and back. But they rather take the water taxi depending on where they worked within Port of Spain.
Do you know how much more, at least $1,000 on your salary that you have to worry about traveling on a regular basis? That the average person.
And if you're driving north south, it's a few $100s a month at least.
Do you know the irony behind this? That $1,000, the average of $1,000, right, is not unemployed individuals. That's the working class paying that money. So when you say that the working class working for a salary, that cost of transportation must be considered in your budget at the same time.
And I do think that if we had a mass transit system, we wouldn't need everybody utilizing it to spend $1,000 a month.
Exactly.
And then gas-wise, like my rough calculation, because I just went to Princestown not too long ago, relatively speaking, I think I used about $100 in gas, right, back and front, and that might be underselling it or overselling it, right? But let's just go with that. That's about $2,000 a month, if I'm not mistaken. And that's $100 a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks or more in a month.
And
that's $2,000 a month. Sorry.
And then we talk about sustainable environment and climate change, and we have thousands of vehicles emitting carbon.
One bus engine versus how many?
How many vehicles?
Yeah.
How many cars on the road? I mean, this article shows that the report actually shows that the cost of it, when you look at the 2.6 billion and a whole month of traffic in traffic congestion, it shows that there's potential for us to explore this more.
And I'm sure, have you ever gone to New York?
I had an experience in Miami, but Miami was because the same lane was working in Miami
With the buses.
And it was painted.
Right.
Clearly designated and painted, and you can't...
The reason why I said that is New York has a subway system, right? I mean, they have tunnels, right? So at this point, they might as well keep the subway.
Panama has it. Panama has it.
Right. And my point is, it's not just transportation for poor people.
No.
Or young people.
The working class using it.
Not just the working class. We're talking guys in suits and tie and fancy, whatever. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about cheap transportation. It's also about the fact that, and believe it, I was in traffic in New York once or twice. It wasn't like in traffic like sometimes that it is here. Those cars were still moving. It wasn't as bad as it is here sometimes, right? So the fact of the matter is, I think we talk about changing taste with regards to the food we eat and the economics. What about changing taste with regards to how we travel? Because I do believe that we're limiting ourselves, we're limiting the potential economic growth, right? Even the fact that people don't want to move from the status quo with regards to how the taxis and maxis exist now limits their growth. Well, because like you pointed out, the road network can't grow. So taximen and maximen are having to struggle more and more to deal with that. If we had a mass transit system, to some extent there might still be room for maxis, especially with regard to the fact that not every location right now will be suitable to have these gigantic buses, right? There'll be some parts where we'll need that smaller scale, you know, more granular system to kind of work. But the major traffic flow areas, we could utilize that and deal with the bulk, and then it'll help tone things down overall.
And although I just don't want the public to get misinformation or be misguided that we are being very critical about, or saying that the progress of the enhancing the highways and expanding the highways is negative. I mean, it has the positives in it, but we have to be realistic that our road network and our transportation network is not as efficient as we believe. There's a lot of improvement that needs to be considered, because when you look at it, we are losing too much productivity, because when you spend so much time in traffic, you imagine you have to a child going to school, and when a child has to go to school and have to reach the school for 8 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, the child has to get up, and parents have to get, that's 3 hours in advance. How is that child going to be effective in a class environment when you up 3 o'clock in the morning and sleeping to drop a child to school? I mean,
some children travel, and that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah, and you have to leave home 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And people had it, and because why? They don't want to sit down in the stress of that traffic, because if they leave that way, if they miss the window, that small window that I have, 5 minutes, and they're in traffic, that's it.
Like case in point, the highway in Diego Martin, it had benefits, right? Don't get me wrong, there are benefits to it, but it hasn't eliminated the rush hour morning traffic out of Diego Martin, right? And to your point, you made a good point. I was thinking, let's have dedicated bus routes, we'll have to build a new one. But if we want to try this out, as you said, we could take a lane, and that's why the expansion of the highway is a positive, it's not a negative, right? Yes, you can't necessarily get a 3-lane highway to literally every corner. You can't get a 3-lane highway going to Blanchisseuse. That's a little too hard, right? But if we could deal with the bulk of it, that would be great. But I also think, too, that we need to just realize, look, it's not about we're trying to rain on the parade and say what we have is bad, but rather we're trying to say we could do better. Right? I don't want to have to necessarily drive everywhere.
No.
Right?
I agree.
I had a teacher, he used to travel on a morning because he had a car, but there were times when he rather travel so he could just kind of snooze on the bus. Because you know when you're feeling sleepy, the last thing you want to do is actually have to drive.
Exactly.
I mean, it would, you know, sometimes you're not necessarily going to fall asleep at the wheel. That would be irresponsible. But sometimes you do feel like you're going to fall asleep in the wheel, and then you have to like wait.
You have to fight it.
You have to fight it,
that.
right? Or but sometimes it's even, well, it's even worse when you're not that sleepy. Because if you're too sleepy, I might say, all right, I'm gonna take a 5 and not drive, right?
That's a risk by itself.
But when you're kind of like in that in-between zone where you're not that sleepy but you're tired, oh, it's miserable to drive in that period. And if we had a transit system
that is much more that is more efficient and effective than what we currently have, and
what would you say to people when we can't maintain the buses? I'm like, why is that an excuse? Why is that an excuse?
Well, then if you can't maintain the buses, then hear what I'm saying. So I would even simply say that why not afford, this is just going thinking out the box at the same time. The taxis that is authorized taxis, I'm saying people, authorized taxis that's supposed to be branded. So this is where I'm saying that we will know who it is. So let's make sure that all the, and so I'm using the south. The green band maxi taxis are going down south, going down the south. They are given a lane to use. So they will have no indiscriminate type of driving because they are doing mass transportation. So they need to reach a point in a particular time to come back into the Port of Spain or the other transportation hubs to get persons out, because the objective is to get persons leaving from point A to point B in the shortest possible time. That is the objective, because that was what transportation is about.
Now imagine if you're taking the ferry as a passenger, or if you're flying, when you're definitely just a passenger. There's no vehicles on planes.
Yes.
Right? What does have to happen? You have to worry about traffic. You have to hire a car. The car is not going to be cheap. And granted, sometimes if you want to hire a private car, that's your business, right? But for people especially who have to get to PR code for a daytime flight, we go into Tobago, we ain't going international, we ain't need to go through this extra expense of hiring a car. Now imagine if you had a reliable bus service to go from City Gate, right? And you could maybe catch a taxi, you know, to get you to City Gate, because everything's more reliable because there's freer space. Then take that bus, right? And there probably should be some facility then to take you from the bus route to the Piarco Airport, right? So then now I don't need to park my car in the airport parking lot and pay money for every day that is there, or try to fight up to get somebody to drop me, or try to fight up when I come back to get somebody to pick me up.
Or leave, or a 20 minutes flight from Trinidad to Tobago, you have to reach there. You have to spend 4 hours in advance because
and the amount of times where it would have been, because if I fly to Tobago and fly back, then I need to get somebody to pick me up. Sometimes who's not available. But if there's public transportation,
but
because there are a lot of commuters between Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
And
so it
on a daily.
It comes back to the amount of time that is, I wouldn't say wasted, but the additional time that we have to use, or calculated the amount of additional time you have to be, say wasted, or recalculate the amount of time that you have to do anything significant.
I have been fortunate, and maybe it's a byproduct of my worthlessness, but I have not had to deal with a commute like most people, right? In part because I'm already in Port-au-Prince, so that's like half the battle, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like if I had to live the last 20 years of my life where 1 to 2 hours a day I'm stuck in traffic, right? I can't imagine. Now, to be fair, I did it where 6 hours of my life per week was stuck on a ferry, so I kind of understand what it's like. It's when you think about it in those terms, it's not just once, right? You have to add up, you know, on a daily basis. Do you just have an hour or two to spare to just be in traffic for no good reason?
Yeah, that's a complete change of family life, of your how you plan your day, because you have to plan your day with traffic. The irony is I have to plan my day because...
And it's not getting better.
No, I had to say, listen, if I have to reach in Port of Spain because the places in Port of Spain is opening, or a mall is opening at 10 o'clock, okay, good. By 8 o'clock, if I had to go to the mall for 10 o'clock, I had to cater for 2 hours to make sure I reach there, because when I finish the mall, I had to cater for the next 2 hours because I expect traffic. You're coming to work, you had to cater for additional 2 hours because 2 hours is traffic if I want to reach your work early. I had to make sure that I reach early to work. And you had to cater for the additional. And then when you have to worry about dropping the child here, dropping your children to this place, or if you're using a vehicle to carpool, you know, the husband and wife, everybody dropping off each other. It's other location, you're dropping your children, and you're dropping some children to work, because you can't depend on the public transportation because it's not as effective as we would like it to be. So the amount of additional hours that you are losing in your day, and the day only have 24 hours, it doesn't have more than 24 hours, but a working day is not 24 hours.
Now, imagine if you could have utilized reliable public transportation all the way from Toco to go into Port of Spain. You don't have to get in, you don't have to wait for a taxi and then pay how, maybe it's a maxi, maybe it's a small bus. Then you take it to Arima, then you get on a big bus on the priority bus route, you just go. And then you're in Port of Spain. And part of it is, it's not just to have buses that we can maintain, but to some extent, it's to have a larger amount of them as part of a system to deal with the volume. So then you could potentially have a bus every 5 to 10 minutes. So you're not waiting there, right, hoping and wishing and whatever and what have you, right?
Some may argue that having a bus every 5-10 minutes, the amount of individuals on the bus running the bus is not feasible. But it may not be feasible in the interim because persons will want to consider how reliable. As they realize that the reliability of the buses or the public transportation is much more, is now expanding, and then we say we have more trust and confidence in the bus, in public transportation, we will see more persons utilizing it.
But not just that. It was like with regards to internet, you know, it was TSCT, and then Digicel came on the scene, and everyone was like, Digicel is the best internet, let's go with Digicel. Well, that's because they had no customers. So when you were like the first customer on your road, right, you had the best service because you had all the infrastructure, all the bandwidth to you. And then all of a sudden what happened? Digicel gets slower. I go into Flow. Flow is the better company. Well, what happened? Flow had no customers when they started. So the first customers, they were the only ones utilizing the infrastructure and the bandwidth, right? So it was great. Think about it for buses. The road is TSCT. It's oversubscribed. Everybody's using it. It's going to run slow. And the buses will be the next communications company that's going to be empty to start off with. So people are going to get wise and say, hey, why am I fighting up with the rest of all you? I have this bus here. It's not that expensive. And I have all the space in the world. I have my choice of seats. And then eventually, of course, hopefully, if they can maintain it properly, enough people will subscribe to it. Right? But listen, we lose money on the air bridge, we lose money on the ferry. I do believe we should only lose money on one of those things, and I believe it should be the ferry. But that's just me, because I don't think the ferry could ever be profitable, right? I don't mind losing money on the bus. At least, especially if it's the start. Because then it could help us transition to a better system.
Yeah, we have to. We have to.
Because part of it is it's a public service. In the sense of it is a travel alternative for people who can't afford certain means of travel, right? But it's also a system to alleviate the traffic and to alleviate productivity woes and to help private business. So now they're commercial tankers, delivery vehicles,
all of that.
Couriers, business vehicles. I am a businessman. I need to go to a site visit to somewhere. I have to worry about traffic, and it's going to take me an hour to get there. And maybe we need to scrub the meeting today and try to schedule it for tomorrow.
And from a disaster management perspective,
well,
when we have to possibly evacuate an area or possibly to treat with certain incidents that we may have, we have to consider traffic plays a critical role because it is now an additional hindrance to when for emergency vehicles to reach the locations.
Brian Lara Stadium, it's 2 lanes, that point in the highway.
Yes.
Now imagine if we had a catastrophe there, something collapsed on people.
It is going to be chaotic at the same time.
But I just thought, like, again, you could have all the siren in the world. If the cars have nowhere to go, they can't get out of your way, you can't make it through.
And that is one of the things the public is always upset with the law enforcement about, because you see a vehicle coming up on the highway. Yes, fair enough, people. We may not know what the emergency is, but I normally get upset because when I see a siren and a person with an officer driving with a siren on the road, I know that he may be going on an incident. But sometimes you have to be empathetic towards the drivers. The driver, there's no way, there's nothing the driver can do. But you're adamant that the person has to go to move. You have to have some consideration, not because the person is not hearing any siren, they don't want to move, you know. It's just that they have no place to move to allow for your space. And that is why sometimes driving with a siren, you have to be considerate of the other drivers also. The siren alone doesn't give you the right to anything at all. So, and that is where, for emergency vehicles, it's difficult for them to maneuver at the same time because the average vehicles on the road, they congest the entire road. They can't move. Fire attendants can't even pass. A fire attendant is not a small vehicle.
Yes,
right?
That is very true.
They need some... And
that's one of the other reasons why we need to reduce the amount of vehicles on the road.
Right. So you have to understand that you have to consider emergency vehicles utilizing the same roads and in the same traffic, so then we wouldn't be always having all these challenges.
I'm telling you right now, if there was a mass bus transit system that could take me from Port of Spain all the way to San Fernando, I would probably be in San Fernando more often.
Well, a lot of persons may want to...
And vice versa.
Traverse back and forth.
And vice versa. Hey, there's a lot of nice... San Fernando's a nice place to visit and enjoy yourself, you know. I'm just saying. You know, unfortunately, I can't take a bus to Tobago because if I could, I would. Believe that, right? If the bridge to Tobago was a feasible, practical engineering reality, I would be all for it. But that's a deep water, whole other kettle of fish. Unfortunately, maybe eventually they'll invent, you know, floating bridge technology that we could implement on a practical level. I don't know about right now.
I can't see that. I can't see that being anything feasible.
Oh boy, one hurricane.
No, that is the putting a highway in the direct part of the hurricane part.
God is a tree.
No, God can't be a tree for that one. I would, if that is realistic, and I can see that before in my generation. I would love to see that.
Last thing, I just want to, Harvey Morris, he had a suggestion with regards to Shogunas. I believe it was him, I could be wrong, to put a rail, right? Because it's shallow water. There's no space to put more road. So if you put a rail system actually over the water, I think.
I think that there was a suggestion for that also for the Western Peninsula.
Well, well, maybe, but I think like once you get to Carnage, when it gets to single lane, definitely all of a sudden like things real rough, real rough.
And so it means that we have to consider or reconsider our railroad, road networks and how more feasible it's going to be because...
the Western Peninsula is so untapped though.
Exactly. Yeah. Expanding of the highway is one aspect of it, but how much more could we expand?
Not west of
and you can't do west. You can't do it there.
Not west of, and yeah, I mean, I think Cocorite, West Moorings, all of those areas, you're tapped out on space there unless you want to rail. That's going to cost a lot of money because that's rail things up down.
And the risk with the Western Peninsula is there's a one-way in, one-way out. Any potential,
but that's the other problem.
Any potential incident in that western part of the peninsula, it means that you're going to have some serious problems. And then we have some important infrastructure, critical infrastructures and agencies that in the Western Peninsula.
I do wonder if those things should be relocated.
Right.
It's kind of crazy that they're just kind of jabbed up there in the corner.
So
you know what I mean?
It's a risk.
All right. Okay. We've gone over time. No calls today. This, like I said, this is just one of those topics. It's like education to me and a couple other things. This is where we could see innovation and radical change without being some crazy nonsense that's going to cost us too much money and actually not work, right? Will we see it? We have an election coming up. I don't think anyone politically is talking about it, so I was very thankful for Ashraf saying, I want to talk about this topic. So thank you.
It's not a political topic, so
it's not a political, yeah.
So I'm not going to...
Yeah, I haven't seen this on any manifestos. This is all Ashraf saying, I have an issue, a practical issue for the people. Is this an important issue for you? Well, you could call in tomorrow and have your say maybe on this matter. But this is something that we've touched on before, but it's one of those things where we're going to probably have to continue to talk about it because it seems as though other people don't want to talk about it. That's fine. We'll talk about it. All right. So this is Talking Point on WSN Show. Michael Small here, reminding you to make today a great day, as someone used to say. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe, and it's nice to be nice on your roads until we get something better. And listen, try and treat your taxi and maxi drivers. I know they can be rude sometimes. It doesn't help you to be rude back, right? Just be nice to them and go your way and move on with your life. It's not that important to always have the last word because things rough out there these days. So stay safe. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist.